Hi, this is Judy at Judi in the Kitchen. As many of you know, I used to own my own bakery and I made everything from scratch. I didn't use frozen bread doughs or anything like that, and I did specialize in yeast breads. So today I'm going to show you how I used to make cinnamon rolls from scratch. I've scaled it down to a home size recipe. So stay with me and you'll learn how to make some really delicious cinnamon rolls. First, we have to assemble some ingredients, and as you see, I have a stand mixer bowl here. I always used a mixer in making my yeast breads because the doughs come out a lot smoother and everything is blended much better, and the gluten is developed very well and the yeast is dissolved, and it just blends in so much better. So right now, for cinnamon rolls, you want them to be very tender. So you want to use all-purpose flour and not bread flour because they'll be too chewy with bread flour. So in this bowl, I have 1 pound, 6½ ounces of all-purpose flour. I do suggest that you weigh the flour rather than measuring it, and then this way you know you're going to get the same consistency each time you do it, and you're not going to put too much or too little flour in your mix. So 1 pound, 6½ ounces of all-purpose flour. To that, I'm going to add 1/3 cup of granulated sugar, 1/2 ounce of RapidRise yeast. Now this is not the regular active dry yeast, this is the quick acting yeast that we're going to use. 1 teaspoon of salt of your choice. And now I'm going to just stir these together to combine the dry ingredients really well. Okay. Now I need to combine my liquid ingredients and warm it all to between 120 and 130 degrees Fahrenheit. When you're using the RapidRise yeast and you're mixing it in with the flour and so forth, the other dry ingredients, you do need to use a little bit warmer temperature of your ingredients. So in this pan, I have 3/4 cup of milk, 1/2 cup of water, and to that I'm going to add 2 5/8 ounces of butter. This is real butter, and that amounts to if you're using the stick butter, which is what this is, it's marked on the little tablespoons there, it would be 5 tablespoons and 1/3, 1 teaspoon beyond that. So now I'm going to heat this up on the stove, and I'm going to use my quick read thermometer to test it out, and when it's between 120 and 130 degrees, I'm going to add it to my dry mix, and we'll be right back. I've heated up my liquid ingredients, and I'm going to let them cool down just a little bit because it got just a little over 130 degrees and I don't want to kill my yeast. Now, in the meantime, I'm going to take this pan that you see right here and fill it with water, and I'm going to turn the stove on and bring it to a rapid boil. I've cleaned the pans out of my oven, and I'm turning the oven light on. Now, I have an electric range, so I want to use my oven as a proof box. And so what I'm going to do is put a pan of boiling water on the bottom rack, and when my rolls are formed, I'm going to put them on the top rack above that boiling water with the heat of the boiling water and the light bulb only. If you have a gas range, the heat from your pilot light will be wonderful. You can still turn on the light bulb, but do not turn the oven on. We're going to just put it in this warm, moist environment to have the rolls proof, and they will not dry out that way. You'll just see how they'll come out just so moist and so tender. So in the meantime, while my liquid ingredients is cooling down just a little bit, I'm getting my oven proof box ready to go with the boiling water. Alright, my milk, water, and butter mixture has cooled down enough to within the correct temperature range. So I'm just going to pour it in to this dry mixture. And I also have 2 lightly beaten eggs, and these are large eggs. Recipes are designed for commercially sized large eggs, If you happen to have farm eggs, something like that, you're going to need to weigh out the egg itself to make sure that you're not adding too much or too little. Now I'm just going to stir this mixture together just to keep from having flour dust spewing all over my kitchen when I turn this mixer on. Well, once I get the dry ingredients moistened, I'm going to put this in my stand mixer on a low speed with the dough hook and have it knead for me somewhere between 8 and 10 minutes. It will be very smooth by that time and very elastic, and it'll be perfect and ready to work with. My dough has kneaded for 10 minutes in the mixer, and you can see it's nice and smooth. Now you really can do this by hand. However, when you do it by hand, it's not going to be as smooth, and you're very likely going to work in a lot of extra flour that will tend to make the rolls a little more tough. So that's why I like doing it with a machine. Now, I've got a little bit of extra all-purpose flour here, and I'm going to put it on my board. I like using a specific board for this. It just helps to keep things under control, and I don't want to scar up my nice little island table that I've got when I go to cut these. So I'm just taking a little bit of flour. Really, you can see it's not that much. I'm just smoothing it out on this board so that my dough doesn't stick. And now I'm going to get this and turn it out onto the dough board. Get out all I can that might be sticking to the inside of the pan here, or the bowl. I'm going to turn it just to help get some flour on it. Pat it out a little bit. And I'm going to set this aside so I don't knock into it. And I'm going to roll it out into a rectangle. And I have a silicone rolling pin. You can use whatever kind of rolling pin you want. It really doesn't matter. Whatever you happen to have on hand. I'm just going to roll this out. Now you can definitely roll it bigger than what I am. And when I had my bakery, I used to roll it out a little bit bigger than this. But I don't have all the equipment that I used to have, and so now I'm doing more like a home cook, which is fine for the videos because it shows you how to make these things at home. Okay. It doesn't have to be absolutely perfectly uniform. Doesn't have to be. You can strive for that. Okay, now we want to get our topping mix. Right here I have a half a cup of brown sugar. I have 4 teaspoons, and these are level teaspoons, of ground cinnamon that I'm just going to mix in there. And we're just going to stir this together so that I can sprinkle it over this very evenly. It'll be mixed up real nicely that way. And I have 2 ounces of softened butter. That will come to 4 tablespoons. Now, if you're going to make regular size rolls, smear this butter on first, leaving a little bit along the edge where you don't have the butter. And then when you roll it from the buttered end over, that non-buttered end will help to adhere to the other side so they won't unroll. But these cinnamon rolls are going to go to work with my husband tomorrow as a surprise for his co-workers for a meeting that they're having. So I want these to be a little bit smaller. So what I'm going to do after I sprinkle this on there is cut it lengthwise this way, and I'm going to form 2 rolls. That way they're going to be smaller, about half size, and I'm going to leave both ends here just a little bit unbuttered, and that way when I cut them lengthwise I'll have that edge able to adhere on both sides. Just little tips that I'm sharing along the way here that can help you out when you're making your rolls. You can smear this with your fingers, whatever makes you happy. You know, my mother used to love to dig in the dirt and garden with her bare hands and jewelry on and all that. She loved to dig in the dirt. I never was one to like to get my hands all that gooed up, so I like to use a spatula to help me out here. But I'm just smearing the butter all over, and that will help your filling to stick really well and flavor it. And oh my, these will be really delicious when they're all fully baked and ready to go. Okay, now I'm going to just sprinkle this topping mix on here, filling, not the topping, it's filling. I also want to make sure that I get some right along the edge there. Just kind of spread it around the best you can. There's no rocket science in doing this. You just want to spread it out in the best way you possibly can after it's rolled. No one will know if it was a little bit uneven. It won't matter. Okay, so now I'm going to cut this roughly in half this way. Now again, if you're making full-size rolls, you won't make this cut right here. You'll just roll from one end toward the other, but I'm going to make 2 strips so that these are half-size rolls. And that's a deliberate move because at this meeting I don't think they're going to want huge rolls. This is a surprise thing for them. And so I'm going to start with the buttered end and just roll them up. Until I get a tight little roll, 2 of them, and you see what I'm doing here. So that gives you an idea of how you go about doing this. And then when I get them both rolled, we'll be right back and I'll show you what I'm going to do on cutting them and getting them on a pan. Okay, I have them both rolled and you can see they're quite long. Now when I did this in the bakery, I actually would cut the log into 3 sections, and then I would cut each section into 6 rolls and bake them in a coated, sprayed 8-inch round foil pan, and those rolls would be mighty big and people absolutely loved them. Now, so I got 18 rolls out of 1 batch, and so that's what you would expect to get this. If you want them really huge, you could cut it into a dozen, but I want them a little bit on the smaller side, and so hence I made the 2 rolls instead of 1. But I'm still going to strive to get 18, a dozen and a half, out of each roll, and out of each log, and then that will give me 36 rolls. But I'm going to start by cutting it roughly into thirds just to help guide me along the way. I'm just taking a sharp knife and I'm just cutting it this way, and then each log I'm going to cut in half again and then cut each one into 3. It just helps in making this a little more uniform as you're going. Now, I'm not baking this in my packs of 6 like I used to in my round 8-inch round pans. What I'm going to do here is do my best to put these on a baking sheet. This is a standard size baking sheet that I have sprayed the edges with, and you can see these spots here. I've sprayed the bottom in just these few spots to hold the parchment paper down, and a little bit between here to hold the parchment paper together. And I'm going to have 4 rows of 9, and that way all of them should fit on here. And I'm doing this on the tight side, putting them close together deliberately so they'll rise up and not out as much. You can spread them out quite a bit. It's really a matter of personal preference. I found that in my bakery, most people like them close together so there was not a lot of the crust edge around there. People would kind of fight in their own little family ways to get that roll that was in the middle. I'd have 5 around in that foil pan and 1 in the middle. The one in the middle was the favorite because it didn't have the crust. So I'm going to bake these as close together as I can so that they'll have as little crust as possible. And I'll show you what the pan looks like when they're all lined up on there. Okay, you can see my pan here, and yes, they are close together. That is a deliberate move. Again, so I'll have the least amount of crust and it'll help them to rise up instead of out. Now these are going to be on the top rack in my oven, proofing for roughly 20 to 30 minutes until they are done proofing and doubled in size or so, and then I'll show you what they look like from there, and then we're going to bake them. Alright, as you can see, my rolls have risen very nicely. I've taken them out of the oven, I've taken the pan of hot water out of the oven, turned the light off, the top rack is in the middle of the oven, and it's preheating to 375. So and these are going to continue to rise just a little bit as the oven is preheating, and once it's hot, then these are going to go in the oven, and I'll let you know what they look like when they come out. Alright, my rolls are baking, and in the meantime I'm going to make our vanilla glaze. And in here I have 2 cups of confectioner's sugar. I make a little bit of a well like there, and I'm going to add 2 tablespoons of milk, and I'm going to add a scant ½ teaspoon of vanilla extract. Set that aside. And add another tablespoon of milk. And right now I have low-fat milk, so this is going to wind up looking a little more caramel color than what you might expect it to look. If you used whole milk, it would be whiter. I'm just going to add a little more milk until I get the consistency that I want. If I accidentally add too much milk, all I need to do is add a little bit more powdered sugar, and that'll thicken it back up. And just keep going here. I think I need just a little bit more milk to that. That was about another teaspoon or so. And that will drizzle on there really well. And those rolls are almost done. We're going to show you what they look like when they come out, and we're going to glaze them right away. It took right at 20 minutes for this pan to bake. How long it takes your rolls to bake is going to vary depending upon your oven and how you put them in the pan, if they're close together or farther apart, if they're 6 in a pan. So it's hard for me to tell you exactly how long to bake it, but this pan took 20 minutes. Now I have my glaze right here, and I'm just going to go ahead and drizzle some of this glaze right on top. I don't like to saturate the rolls with it. Some people do, and that's okay. If you like it that way, more power to you, go for it. But I like to glaze them just as soon as they come out of the oven, and that allows the glaze to melt down in there a little bit and helps to flavor the rolls, makes them look pretty. There's my pan of cinnamon rolls. They are all glazed, and I'm just going to allow them to cool. There you go. Now we have some beautiful homemade cinnamon rolls just like I used to make in the bakery. Feel free to give this a try. I hope it works for you. If you encounter some trouble along the way and you're just not confident in dealing with yeast breads, please give me a comment below, and I'll be glad to help you out any way that I possibly can. This is Judy at Judy in the Kitchen. Have a great day.